This Day in Sports History. And welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History. It is January 7th, and on this day we had a huge reversal of fortune in a basketball game, an unlikely finish to a football season, and the Clown Princes of basketball played their first ever game. All that and a little more coming your way right after this.
And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you. A few minutes later. All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach. Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com. So I need to admit before I get started here that I did try to write the intro to this first story, substituting the lyrics of Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back with ones describing how, we all like comebacks and we cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny that when a game gets going and the lead starts growing, you get bored. But it wasn't good, so I have spared you that misery. But we do like to see those games where big deficits are wiped away. And on this day in 2017, we had one of those. Nevada was visiting the New Mexico Lobos in the pit on this night. The home team Lobos shot out to a 13-point lead at half, and with 4.5 to play in this one, that lead had grown to 19. And with just over a minute to play, the lead was still a 14-point advantage for New Mexico. Now, this mid-season Mountain West Conference game was over. Lobos fans were pulling up stakes and heading for the gates. Wolfpack fans had either turned away or fallen asleep. But the Nevada players reawakened quicker than Robert De Niro in that movie with Robin Williams. Sorry, that was a weak analogy. I gotta work on those. Anyway, the Pack woke up.
Marshall for three, yes! Fires the three, hit it again! Two-possession game. Caroline, yes!
They're not going away. Clock is ticking, they're down 6.
Ramsey uses a screen from Caroline, gives to Marshall, immediately hoists, he was hit, banked it home anyways! Missed them both, 3-point game. Caroline's got 40 tonight, including a few threes. Marshall's hit a couple late. He goes up, some contact, no call. He banked it in anyways, and we're tied at 94.
You have to be kidding me. New Mexico with the final shot.
3 seconds left. Brown, he wants to take it. He fires, comes up short. Overtime at the pits.
A mix of Jordan Caroline and Marcus Marshall threes and poor free throw shooting from New Mexico, and that 14-point lead with 64 seconds was erased. And in the unlikeliest of circumstances, this game was headed to overtime, tied at 94. The OT was back and forth, and with 8.7 seconds left, the Lobos hit one of 2 free throws to give them a 2-point lead to set up the dramatic finish.
Ball inbounded to Caroline. They cross out court with 6 seconds. He fires a three. Rattles home. And Nevada leads with 2.9 seconds left. They inbound to Brown. Up the floor. Throws up a prayer. Won't go, and Nevada completes the comeback. They win for the first time ever here at the pits.
Jordan Caroline with a game winner to cap off his 45-point night. Marcus Marshall added 26 in the 105-104 win for Nevada. The 2007 college football season was one of the wildest on record. It started the opening weekend with Appalachian State's upset of Michigan on September 1st. That was followed by the top 2 ranked teams in the nation losing on a nearly weekly basis. Number 1 and number 2 had not lost on the same weekend since 1996, 11 years before, and yet on 3 different weekends in the 2007 season, number 1 and number 2 both went down. 7 times during the final 2 months of the season, the team that sat number 2 in the AP poll lost. 17 different teams had been ranked in the top 5 throughout the year. The year of the upset finally came to an end on this night in 2008 when number 1 Ohio State and number 2 LSU met in New Orleans for the national championship game. Now, this matchup was a bit of a surprise. At the beginning of December, people thought, they'd be watching West Virginia and Missouri in this one. Instead, both of those teams went down in flames in their respective conference championship games. Despite having 2 losses, the Tigers were actually 5.5-point favorites in this one. But of course, the game did not follow any sort of script, at least not from the start. The starting lineups had barely been introduced when Chris "Beanie" Wells bolted for the end zone.
Wells, a big burst to the outside. Beanie Wells to the 30, the 20. A lunge for a tackle. Touchdown, Buckeyes, 65 yards.
It was 10-3 Buckeyes at the end of one, and that's when LSU started to get cranking. The Tigers put a couple of touchdowns on the board to take a 7-point lead, and then squelched a Buckeye drive on this play.
And they're coming after Beckman, who lost it to the far side, and it is intercepted by Shevis Jackson to the 30, the 25, and run out of bounds.
That was the first of 2 interceptions for Todd Beckman on the night. LSU was able to capitalize on the mistake with a Jacob Hester 1-yard touchdown run. The Tigers scored 24 unanswered to take a 24-10 lead into halftime. The teams exchanged touchdowns in the third quarter, and then LSU put the proverbial nail in the coffin with under 2 minutes to play.
Flynn rolls wide open as Dixon.
That was Matt Flynn's 4th touchdown pass of the night. Flynn completed 19 for 174 yards. The Buckeyes scored quickly on their next possession to tighten up the margin a little, but when the clock went to triple zeros, the LSU Tigers won 38-24, becoming the first 2-loss team to win a championship since 1960. And it was the Tigers' first national title since 1958. On this day in 1980, the Philadelphia Flyers lost for the first time in 86 days. Back on October 13th of 1979, the Flyers lost in the second game of the 79-80 season in a 9-2 drubbing to the Atlanta Flames. Now, from that point until this day in 1980, the Flyers did not lose again. During that span, they won 25 and tied 10. The Flyers had a pretty good mix of veterans and young talent that season, and during the streak had clutch goaltending performances from Phil Meir and Pete Peters. Bobby Clark was the heart and soul of that team and was literally a coach on the ice. He'd been promoted to assistant coach while still playing for the team and had to give up the C on his sweater due to league rules. Here's Clark remembering the streak years later.
I think we just played them one night at a time, and when you go that long without getting beat, you got to get lucky lots of times.
There were several close calls along the way. A few nights before they broke the NHL unbeaten record, the Flyers were playing at home against Pittsburgh. Philly trailed 1-0 late in the third, and with just over 4 minutes to play in the game, Ben Wilson found the back of the net to tie it up and keep the unbeaten streak alive. And that actually tied the previous record of 28 games set just 2 years prior by the 78 Montreal Canadiens. 2 nights later, they were in Boston and cruised to a 5-2 win over the Bruins to break the record and continue to build on it until this night. Playing on the road at Minnesota, the North Stars took a 3-1 lead into the first intermission, added 2 more in the second, and another pair of goals in the third period to beat the Flyers 7-1 and end the unbeaten streak at 35. It is the longest unbeaten streak in professional sports. The Flyers wrapped up the division and number 1 playoff seed with 14 games to play in the season, exacted a little bit of revenge on the North Stars by bouncing them in the playoffs to advance to the Stanley Cup Finals, but lost in 6 games to the New York Islanders. Have you ever been to a Harlem Globetrotters game? Well, even if you have not, you surely know about them and the fun shows that they've been putting on for kids of all ages for generations. Well, the Harlem Globetrotters played their first ever basketball game on this day back in 1927. Now, first thing to know is that they are not a team from New York. Instead, they're from Chicago, and Chicago's Abe Saperstein took over as coach of a group of black Chicago players who had previously played for a team known as the Savoy Big Five. Black players were not allowed to play in a professional basketball league at this point, and they would not for another 23 years. To better market the team, Saperstein made the decision to name them after the famous black neighborhood in New York, and even sewed New York on the team's red, white, and blue jerseys. And the group became a barnstorming team that would travel around in the Midwest playing games. Well, on this night, they traveled the 50 miles from Chicago to Hinckley, Illinois. They lost on this night, but over a 117-game schedule that year, they won 101 of them against a variety of competition. Now, this was not the entertaining group that you see now. They weren't doing the crazy dribbling and the bucket of confetti or clowning around with the ref. This was a team that got played to play basketball and play to win. The reported pay for this night was $75, and that is not per player. That is $75 to be split among the 5 players. One of the guys on the team was Al Runt Pullins, who was by all accounts a star player who also owned a car, so the guys could get from town to town to play the games. Saperstein said many years later that Pullins was the best player he ever coached. By 1936, they were playing upwards of 1,000 games a year, and it was not until 1939 that the Harlem Globetrotters you know today started to take shape. Once the team had a large enough lead, the players were allowed to show off some of their skills to the crowd, and they started performing a few on-court comedic pieces as well. The crowds overwhelmingly loved the performance, and Saperstein encouraged more of it, but again, only when they had a substantial lead. They've played all around the world and delighted fans for nearly 100 years, and they got their start on this day in 1927. And on this day in 1954, Fort Wayne Pistons player Jack Molinas played his final game in the NBA. The Pistons were on the road at Syracuse on this night. Molinas played 35 minutes, scored 7, and grabbed 5 rebounds in a 79-67 loss to the Nationals. So, was Molinas an aging veteran who was ready to hang up the sneaks? He was not. He was a rookie in the NBA at this point. Was he struggling on the court? Again, no, he wasn't. He was averaging close to 12 points and 7 boards a night as a rookie. He was one of the starters even. Well, did he have a medical issue that ended his career? And again, the answer is negative. Instead, Jack Molinas was a gambler, and he loved to bet on professional basketball games, such as games involving the Pistons, and not always to win. He was also mixed up with mob guys. He had connections with Tommy Eboli and Vincent the Chin Gigante. Those connections stretched back to when Molinas was an All-American at Columbia University. When his gambling came to light, he was suspended and then barred from playing in the NBA. He went on to play 8 seasons with 3 different teams in the Eastern Professional Basketball League before retiring and becoming a lawyer. That would not be the end of his story, though, and there's a lot more to come on Jack Molinas at a later date. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports Fun Fact. In 1974, the Gerber Baby Food Company briefly put out a new product line of jarred food intended for single adults on the go. You could choose from beef burgundy, Mediterranean vegetables, and blueberry delight. And all you needed to do was heat up the jar and eat. But the idea of eating pureed food out of a glass jar thankfully failed to catch on with people over the age of, 10? That's all I've got for you at this point. Come on back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.